Hello and welcome back to Fuse Coding with me, edA-qa mort-ora-y. I'm one of the programmers at Fuse and I do mainly layout animation and I work partly on the state as well. And today we'll be doing some login transitions that I found over on Dribbble. This is our new favorite site. Well, it's been a favorite material, but I found a guy over here. I can't decide if it's a person or an organization because I have a TM beside the name, but Johnny Vino. They have all these wonderful, or he has all these wonderful little UIs in here. Unfortunately, most of them are portrait only and doesn't show off the adaptive nature of Fuse, but we're going to do them anyways because I think these things, with a bit of work, you can make them to be layout or portrait mode, landscape mode as well. So we're going to take a look at this one. It's some sort of funding app. I'm mostly interested in the transition aspect of it, so I'm just going to view the image itself, nothing more. And we want this to have this two-view thing on some background and then the transition here. We're going to see how far we can get today and what we can do about this stuff and see how it goes. If you have any questions along the way, feel free to ask. Just to make you know up front, this is not necessarily a tutorial. I don't know how to do all of the little bits in front, so I'm just exploring it, so don't be surprised if I get a few things wrong. This is using the currently released version of Fuse. I've been learning my lesson and trying to avoid my private branches. So we're using the released version. I just grabbed some background over from Pixabay. I had this option or this option. I took the more subtle one, and obviously you can just grab what you want. When doing these things for an app, you're going to want to spend more than, the 2-minute searching effort I did to find backgrounds. You probably want custom things. His background here actually looks really nice and it'll blend well. And we're just going to use this one. And we don't have that phone layout, but there will be rounded buttons in the phone. So let's get started. We're going to start on this sign up screen here. And this isn't necessarily a lot of just transitions, it's not a lot of animation. We have to actually get the state set up here. How do we actually want to get the navigation set up? And this is a bit more coding heavy than pure animation, but we'll try to keep this nice and simple. I've already set up the basic app, and as a reminder, in the project file you add star.js, fuse.js to use the new state system. Still technically beta, but we're going to use it anyways. And we have the main state, and I just threw a title in, as always, just to test it. We're going to have a view. Okay, sometimes the mouse is not going to move. One of my mice stopped working on the Mac, so I have to always use the one mouse. I tend to use both hands, and now I'm stuck with the one today. So we're going to have a top-level navigation, and this navigation is going to switch between logged in and logged out. So let's do navigator. And it has a fixed number of pages, so we don't have, this part is not dynamic. I want to see how we can do that, or should I make it dynamic? We don't have the perfect solution for how to navigate between multiple levels in the state yet. The router kind of took care of this before. So I'm just going to add a router here as well, just to deal with it, and then we'll make this here. And then we're going to say navigator and default equals logout slash, I don't know, we'll just let it take the default there, logout. And then we're going to do a page logout here. We're going to have to create this class, and then we're going to do a page login, or just call it home. I usually tend to call it home instead of login. This image can stay there in the background, and this is going to be the navigator. And it's going to complain on us right away because we're missing a bunch of options here. So you're going to see errors over on the side of the screen, again, the mouse, that we're missing page home and page logout. You'll see it here. Yeah. So we're missing page home and page logout. Default also doesn't have a default, which is kind of a problem. It's default path. Okay. And page home, page logout. This is fine. So and these should be templates as well. And these are the names of it. So the names we refer to them by. They're a fixed set of pages. So let's create another class, PageUX class equals page logout. This is the most interesting one. We're going to save it quickly first, page logout.ux. Then we'll create another one as well, page home, just so it stops complaining at us. Page home.ux. Okay. And so you see to stop complaining for us, but we're not showing anything yet. So we're going to deal with page logout first. Hello, oxygen deprived. Welcome to the show. We're doing transitions today in Fuse for login with fancy ones. And we're trying to recreate this with slightly different colors, of course, because I don't have the same background. Okay, so we have this, and now we want to put the 2 pages. If you look at the original one, we have a sign in and a create new. And I think this is an interesting way to do the 2 options to it. You can see that it has titles basically on the top and bottom, and that makes it interesting, but these 2 have to be the same size. This could be a bit challenging here, and I'm not entirely sure how we'll do that, but we're going to find it out. And I'm going to use a PageControl because that sets up the basic navigation. For only 2 items, you may or may not need to use it. If you only want like just 2 items, you don't have to use a PageControl because, hey, it's just 2 items, but you may want to do the same thing with 3 items. So I want to show the generic way of doing this, and it also works with 2, so let's do it that way. And it has 2 pages in it. It has pages, and how do they want to do this? I want to do okay, so the main view again, we have these 2 paths here, default paths, and I really have to decide how I want to set this up because I want to pass data down to there. We don't have to make them actual logins, so let's do, I'm going to create 2 pages here. Or how do I want it? I'm trying to think of how to set up the data model right now. I usually don't have to do it. The PageControl has 2 pages. We can stick these pages directly into this one, login pages, and we're going to create an array of pages for it. Page login, export page create. I should probably call this create login and page create, or register. Register is a clearer word. And so we're going to put 2 pages, new page login, new page register. And this is on page logout. And the pages, and this is how we do the binding. These are dynamic, so depending on the pages there, pages equals login pages. Now you might actually want to do this, maybe you want to add a Facebook login, an OAuth login, so you kind of make this halfway dynamic. And this template is going to be called, we can simplify it. If you give it the same name as the class, then you don't have to modify the class. So page login, whatever this page is. And then we have, and I'm not going to make these pages, I'm just going to make these panels, because they don't need to be pages in this case. Although, honestly, in most cases, it doesn't make a big difference. If you're using a navigator, you should always use pages. But in this case, I want to stress the point that these don't feel like pages, but it doesn't make a big difference. There are some cases in a navigator when you're loading dynamically pages, you should actually make them pages because it has a few extra features for the busy tracking. Page register. Now these both have a very basic layout, and this is going to have a common class. I should actually make a common one up here, and this is going to be a page log. I don't know what to call these things, so I'm going to call it PL base. Just give it a name. If you're struggling for names sometimes, just give it something. I know you're supposed to think of names a lot, but this is localized to here, and we don't have to think too long about it. So these are actually going to become PL base. And the one thing PL base is going to have is it's going to have a title. And we're going to duplicate as much of the logic as we can. The title is going to be, what did we say? We're going to copy the thing exactly. Sign in, and create new. It's really kind of a strange word for an account, but okay, fine, create new. Sometimes register, it might make sense. And so this has to have a title on it, UX property equals title. And I'm trying to think of what type of panel type is this. Can we pause it? I don't have a version of Firefox where I can pause these things. I don't have the proper GIF viewer. And that's why I actually hate the GIF format. It's a stupid format. I wonder if they offer me the MP4 version as well. No. Well, access denied. Wonderful. It's a terrible format because it doesn't compress well, it has bad colors, you can't control the playback, but everybody seems to love them, and I just find it to be a terrible format, GIF. I mean, it should be gone a long time ago. It's not even GIF anymore, it's some modern sort of GIF-V or something. Oh, this is just a normal GIF. So I can't pause here, so we're just going to have to guess. There was a little bit of 3 lines, sign up. So this looks like a stacked panel. So we're going to make this a stacked panel. That's kind of what it looks like. And so the first one we'll have is a font or text value equals property this dot title, font size equals 26, and font equals bold. I'm not going to go through the effort again of setting up new fonts. We're just going to use whatever the stock fonts in the system are. Then there's going to be a bunch of stuff in the middle, say panel down here. And at the very bottom is also the title comes up again. It's the exact same one. And it's the same thing, font equals bold. And according to the diagram, though, this has an alignment of center. Alignment equals center. And whereas this one has alignment equals left, but that's the default. We don't have to type that, but we might as well. So now we have these 2 page controls, and we'll see what happens where we're at right now, other than having a bunch of errors and export page login. That makes sense. I type export instead of class. Okay, so it's not very exciting. You have this page control, and it's absolutely not what we want right now, right? It isn't totally in the wrong place. But that's okay. We're trying to figure out what size should these things be. Now, sizing pop-ups like this is inherently quite annoying on devices when you want to be responsive. So if it's layout or whatever, because it's like, well, you don't want it too big and you don't want it too small. You need to have it centered, but we don't need it to be super big. So how are we going to do this? Let's do this first by saying the page logout, this page control here, it has a margin of, say, 20. And it has I'm trying to think of where it should go. We're going to put it right in the center. We're going to do the very odd thing of making the control page panel take the size of its children. Now this is a very strange thing to do. And we're also going to take the clip to bounds and set it to false, because usually it clips, and we don't want it to clip. And it's going to start doing weird things as we're working with it. So now we have to create new, and we have the sign in, they're both there. And it looks a bit funny. So this is stuck in the middle there. I'm not clear on why that... Alright, no, I understand that move in there is because the bottom items here, they don't actually have... It's changing the size. Once one becomes active, it fits in differently. So we're just going to make it a vertical center. Or that's totally wrong. Center... Yeah. Vertical center. Don't know why it's mad about that. Where's this logs? Clip top bounds. Okay, it doesn't like that one. Yeah, I should spell that correctly. Okay. And so now you see it's centered here, and it still fills the width with the margin. But we definitely need to have a background on here. And so this panel is going to have a big padding again. What does the graphic show for the padding? It's a pretty heavy padding here. So about the same as the outside. And we set the outside to 20. So it also looks like 20 points as well. And again, when I say points, these are just generic sort of device points. They're kind of the same size across devices, and everybody's kind of standardized, and a point is what the traditional size of a pixel was in a single resolution desktop monitor. But be aware this varies between devices. Your points will be bigger and smaller. They try to stay within the same size. They're far more consistent than, say, a pixel at least, but you still have to be aware of the fact it's not going to have an exact layout. And so this thing, so we're going to put a background in now. Background color equals, and we have a color picker. Somebody told me about it. Where is this thing? Color utils. Let's see what else I have installed. Somewhere in here is color. Color. There we go. And I'm just going to put this down here. I think it always runs. It's going to disappear on us, but kind of nice. So we're going to see if its white is actually white. His white is actually white. So let's just put that away for now. The white is actually white. And because, again, this is a GIF, sampling colors from it's going to be a bit horrid because you notice the horrible gradients because of the fact it's a GIF. But that's okay. Color was white. And corner radius, it was... That's like also a 10. Layer equals background. And again, the reason I put background is because it should sit in the background, not just because of Z order, because it should ignore padding. Things in the background, just ignore the padding. So now we have a little bit further. Now we have the basic sign-in, and you notice the text, the first thing there is, we won't worry about details first. Let's stick some pseudo fields on here first. Email and password, and let's stick those ones on. Now these are the same for both of them, but that's kind of coincidental, and whether you want to reuse the same control or not is kind of up to you. Maybe it should have the emails first of all, but if you did add a third panel, which was a Facebook or other thing, you may not want it. But I'm just going to treat them as separate right now, creating new and signing in, because they might be different options. So what do we want? We want to have I can create a form label. There's no such thing as called form label. I'm just going to add it. What names is he calling this again? Just wait. Email and password. Email. And so this is going to be a text UX class equals... Actually, you know what? Let's do this a little bit differently. Let's call this a form string. And now, let's go back to form label. We can refactor it later. So we have a text UX class. I wanted to show how to add multiple items via class. So this is called a form label. And really all it has is it has a different font. It has a text color. And its text color is, it looks to be a little bit subdued. It's hard to tell. Maybe it's somewhat black. It's still quite black. So we're still going to make it like fairly black. It's quite small though. Font size equals, just say 18. We have form label. And then we're going to have a text box. Value equals, let's just say email. We'll bind to an email here somewhere. We haven't decided where yet, or I can show you where. In the main state, again the wrong mouse. Main state. And the page login, or which one are we on? We're in the sign up. We'll just start with a default email value. This dot email equals sample at samply.com or something. I don't know wherever that goes to. And we bind to it here. And this is because on the main view, what I haven't set up yet is, no, not this, not in the main view. We have it on the page logout, this binding to login pages. It creates the bindings for each of these. Okay, and it should create it, but I made an error. Form label does not have a property called text. Form label's value, that's correct. There we go. So now we have email, and it's missing something, so we didn't bind to the email. So we have some binding here. This login pages, it shows up. Start email. Do I have the wrong one? Page login. Yeah, register. I wanted register. And we're going to do the same thing for login. These are obviously editable fields, and I'm just using it initially as debugging. It's a great way when initially debugging just to put values in the fields. So we have this, we have the standard login now, and we still have the swipe control, so we don't have the correct setup. But let's fix one more thing first. And alright, this is, you notice one problem we have this title and the sign in, but then our stuff comes in the bottom. Now we don't actually want this. We want to control the outer layout. So when we see pale base, we want this stuff to go inside some kind of inner layout. And this is what we can use a container for. And this is documented on the website. Let's go over to container. Whoops. And see how you use a container. I know how they're used, obviously, but I always just forget the minimal syntax. So a container class. Container basically lets you create custom containers. And the key I'm looking for is subtree, and I'll show you how to use it in a sec. So we have, instead of making this a panel, we make this a container. We could still give it a padding, that's fine. Container. And then we put the stack panel inside here. Stack panel UX name equals inner. We're going to refer to it by inner. Actually, no, I don't want to do that. That was wrong. I want to do a container, and we're going to have to do a double stack panel, which is a little bit weird. Stack panel, and this is not the inner container. And I'll do it with the double stack panel first of all. So we have the inner container, then we have the inner container stack panel UX name equals inner. And there's just nothing in it first of all. And that's why I had the placeholder before. And the container, if we look at this, has something called a subtree. Subtree equals inner. What this says is that any children added to this container PL base, so like these children down here, will be stuck in this stack panel here. So if we save that, now we should have the layout that we were trying to get, unless we have problems. Cannot log out to page. Okay, something went wrong here. So I'm just going to refresh this. Right, so I got it stuck in some place. So when in doubt, you can sometimes do a viewport restart. It's still an issue with our model stuff that we still don't necessarily reload some of it correctly. You always have that reload option. Okay, now I've done something wrong. What's the first one that comes up? Possibly... Okay, now what have I done wrong? What did I do wrong here? Why did this stop working? I'm not clear on this now. So we're missing something. Main state's all fine. That was all working fine. We didn't change that. Page logout. Page home has logout, and that's where we are. Page logout has the pages. Click the bounds margin equals 20. Just want to see where this is. To debug layout things, you can often just add colors to certain things and see if they show up. So it is there, we just don't have anything in it. So it's appeared 20 here. Okay, yeah, I forgot one point in container. A very important detail of container is that you have to put this UX binding on everything you don't want inside the inner container. You have to put a binding on it. And you have to say this children here is the proper children of container. Because the way the inheritance works is that these children here are just the same as the children here, but this binding then says, look, these are going to a special location. So that should fix my problem. And I'll get rid of this red down here, which I used for debugging. But you notice what we have now is we have the sign-in, and our email goes in the right location. Now you want to say it's like, well, this stack panel, it seems kind of redundant whether to put it here. And we should be able to get away with just saying, well, the main layout is a stack layout instead. But then we have nowhere. Then we could but then we have to bind all these additional things to binding as well. So let's just do the double stack layout. That stack panel. It doesn't really cost that much, and it should be fine. And this thing has a margin. Let's put a big top and bottom margin. It does on the original here. There's a very large margin. And this guy loves his 2 uppercase stuff. So you can actually do this 2 upper. And get that. And his is actually a bit smaller then, but it's all uppercase. Obviously it's a different font. I can only recreate it so much unless I go to the effort of getting a different font. But let's do the 2 upper anyways. Equals 2 upper property title. I'll put some added spaces in here for clarity. Then we have them both as 2 upper. Now we also have a password. Now these labels here, they're also There are also two uppers, so he does everything with two upper. And what we can do here is what I said here about this combined thing here, form label. We still need the form label, but what we might actually want to do is we can create a custom class. If we're going to reuse this in many places, we're going to say a form, and yeah, I'm just undecided about this. Let's just get back to let's worry about the details later, small details. And I'll just cut and paste this for now, form label. Because we can make this form label a custom class that does the two upper on this as well, or we can simply do it on our own text box, and this is going to be a password. And I've forgotten what the thing is, input. I've forgotten what it is to mark password, so let's go do that too. Is password. So we have an is password on here as well. Is password. It's true. And we're binding to passwords. We're just going to throw something in the password here as well. This.password equals whatever the user has for a password. This is not a very good password. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this site. There's the world's best password. I gotta see if I can find that world's best password. And oh man, I can't find it. There's this wonderful site where the guy goes through and says what the best password is, and it's a single password and it's static. I wish I could find it. The best password. No, I can't find it. But if you can find it, it's this cute page. It's a nice satire that because all these sites have these really stupid password rules about mixed uppercase and lowercase rules and blah blah blah, and they never actually enforce good security, he actually made something that follows all the rules on the sites he finds and put one static password that fits them all. And the satire, of course, is that because, you know, it's static but it fulfills those rules, it's not a very good password. I just can't find it right now. Okay, so we have email, and we probably shouldn't have two emails. We should have a password here. And we should have a bit of an item spacing here on these items, so probably this one down here. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky, that, well, you want the labels to be stuck down to it, so instead of putting spacing, we're going to put a panel height equals 20 in here to space them out. And then we don't have that. So we have the basics here, and just for now, I'm going to put a register here as well. And I'm just going to make it the exact same values and just ignore it for now. So if we go back here, we can do create that and that. So create new, create new. The text is probably too big still, but it's hard to tell. There's more spacing, and again, you have to worry about that. Now his has password, and on the second one it has a confirmed password as well. Now a lot of these things no longer have that confirmed password. When they create new, they just have one password. And that means ours are exactly the same, but different processes. And I'm having a hard time deciding whether it's a good user experience to require a confirmed password. It makes a lot of sense. The user doesn't type it twice incorrectly, but at the same time, recovery should be so simple that maybe they shouldn't. And so I'm just going to put a second one for now, just so we have it matching it, and it actually creates a problem by having them different sizes, so we actually want that. We want them to be different sizes because it creates a problem for us. Re-enter password, password 2, let's call it. And we haven't addressed the main problem. You notice how suddenly this one jumps to another side, and it's because of how the page control is working. The moment the next one becomes active, it gets bigger. And so now we have to start creating the bit where these are actually overlapped. And you notice how it also disappears on us. So first off, we don't want necessarily... How are we going to do this? We have swipe direction. Now I got to start checking these controls here, where the label's on them. We have a lot of things that control if you want to do these custom types of layouts. PageControl. Okay, allowed swipe directions. Yeah, that's Alright, this is actually not what I want. We want to do inactive state. Inactive state, what happens in an inactive state? Nothing. So by default, when something's inactive, the page control it does collapsed. I thought I marked the default. I'm sorry, it's not here. So the default is collapsed or disabled. And we're not going to do disabled or anything. We are going to do just nothing. Because we actually kind of need this to be active. And this was inactive state equals unchanged. That's the first one we set. In motion we can leave. Interaction we can leave. And what do we want? Transition. And this is the second one. Transition equals none. And again, at first, this is going to break things. Bad stuff's going to happen. They're just going to overlap on top of each other. They should have. Something went wrong there. It might be a reload thing, so let's just refresh this. So now I have no transition. That's more what I expect. But we don't have navigation then. There's no transition at all. So what we have to do now is we have to say, well, what happens to these things when they're off the screen? Well, they have two positions, in front and in back. Are they in front? In the front we call entering animation. Again, it's a bad name. We've never fixed it. Exiting animation is hard to fix now because everybody uses it. But it should be called like front and back animation. And so when we're entering, when we're in front of the other one, this is the one, it should be going up, I think. So move y equals, and we're just not going to move it a lot. We're going to say like move like minus 50. And on the other side, we're going to say move 50. Now this might be something that looks like the preview doesn't like picking up dynamically if I add and remove those things. Oh, I put them on the wrong place here. This is going to be an issue too. These have to go on the children. Make sure the binding here. This gets a bit difficult because we're inside a container. That makes it just slightly more challenging. Okay, so now you see create new here. It's hiding in the background. Our scroll direction is still left and right, which we'll have to fix as well, but just leave that for now. And so how do we change this? Well, we have this background color here, and we're going to give it a name. UX name equals background. And we're going to do another thing. We're going to do deactivating animation. This is in any direction. Any direction is doing it because these ones apply only, entering only applies and goes in the front, and exiting only the back, and deactivating says, I don't care which direction. And we change background.color equals to something a little bit darker. I don't know how dark we have to go, edA-qa, just enough to make it stand out. And I probably typed something wrong because it got mad at me. Typed something wrong. Animation. I should have just used the autocomplete. Okay. And now you see it's a different color. It's a lot different color, so let's check back to see what heat is. But when you scroll into view, it becomes the right color. And you notice the overlap's also a problem, and we're going to address that one as well. Let's look at what colors he's using it for the back there. Where's our... Let's sample this. We have EE. So it's really not that much different color. That was maybe EE. So let's just put E's for now. Okay, and so it's clearly a different color, and our spacing isn't quite correct. That's okay. But you notice the big problem is it's staying in the front. We need it to go to the back, and I'm not sure, how does he do the transition to the back anyways? It's just kind of magical. They just kind of flip at one point. Okay. And we can do the same thing. I was going to say, I don't know, a clever animation, they just kind of flip. And we can do the same flipping. But you notice they also scale a bit in the background? They go a little bit smaller. And I won't worry about the animation curves. Let's just make them go a bit smaller. And the second one we have here is we have this, and deactivating animation, we're going to do one more thing. Change this .z offset, move it to the background, and anytime I change something, I prefer to use an explicit default. In some cases you have to because there's implicit properties. And so it starts at 0, and as we go, if we're deactive, we move into the background. And that'll create the switch. When we go to the switch, that they go into the background. And our scaling again, we put this on the wrong thing. Sorry about that. We always have to bind these to children again because of the container. You have to be careful with working container because what was happening, to explain again, when I didn't have binding here, so when it was just like this deactivating animation was being stuck just on this stock panel, not on this. And so it's something you just have to be aware of when using container. Okay, so now we have this, and we have these two states, and it's not a perfect match to his system yet. But we're getting there. We have the basic thing. Now we have a lot of details. And I have a feeling his doesn't actually... that's interesting. His doesn't even line up. So he doesn't even have a transition. That's very curious. So there's no transition whatsoever on his. And this becomes a little bit weird, though, with this backstage panel. How do we do that? We have no transition. And we have to move it down. Okay, so they really have nothing. He just kind of deactivates them. And that means the page control kind of needs a... Well, this is really hard to do the overlap. So these would both fill the whole thing. So let's just do this explicitly. And say offset equals 0, comma, minus 50. We only have 2. But doing these overlaps, we don't really have any layout that does overlap because naturally layout doesn't really want to do overlap by default. So let's put 25 and 25. That'll keep them centered. And I think that gets closer to what he wants. Yeah, that gets closer, but they have to be a bit farther apart. So we need even more of an overlap, or less of an overlap, I mean. And so now you can actually see it in the back. We're still using this strange navigation though, right? You can see I'm still scrolling back and forth. And this just shows how generic our system is, that this is just the default. The actual navigation approach is different from what actually an animation is. So, but how can we do it? We can't tell from here. He's doing a clicking back and forth, so there's no scrolling nav. And honestly, if I was a user and I saw this thing, I wouldn't think to scroll up and down anyways. I would probably just click on the other one and get it working. So let's do that. On the page control, we're just going to say, look, just take interaction equals none. And there is a way, if you look at page swipe or swipe navigate, there's a swipe navigate would let you set up the up-down navigation if you really want. But what we'll do here is we'll just create our own when you click on it. But that's interesting. Well, how does that work then? How do we make it clickable? Because these are going to be buttons and stuff. And if this thing's inactive, you don't want to be able to click on the stuff. Like this is a text box, that's fine. But when you click back here, it's not, you're not clicking the button create new, you're just clicking to go to the panel. So how can we do this? We can do a couple of different things. The easiest approach, which is probably a little bit weird, is we can do on the whole thing. This is a stack panel, this is a stack panel. We're going to have to change the stack panel as well. We're going to do while inactive. Okay, UX binding equals children because we're not putting it. We're putting it directly on the one on the whole stack panel, on the whole container. And I'm going to put a new panel here, Z, and I'm going to put layer equals overlay. But this is going to include the background, so let's do it this way. We're going to put this background on the stack panel and give the panel the padding, just so we don't have to compete with the padding on the outer one. We keep it simple. And we stick this one in the overlay, which means it goes on top. And the hit test mode equals local bounce. It's going to be invisible too. We're not going to put any color, and that's why I'm putting local bounce, so we know it's still clickable. And then we have to do something when it's clicked. And this is the bit challenging part. How do we do that? We're inside a page, and that gives us the weird thing. We know we have this. We have to give the page control name now too, page nav. And we're going to attempt to do this. I think this works. We're going to do set page nav.active equals page node. Page is something that binds to the current page inside a navigation, and node is the one saying the node itself. And so what we're doing here is saying when we click on it, switch to this in the page navigation. And we can do this without going to JS at all. And we seem to have problems. Just going to refresh it again. Alright, so it's not working as I intended. So let's put a color on this panel so we can actually see if it's doing something. We'll see if it actually shows up. No, and it's not showing up, which is the first problem. Well, something weird's going on here. Yeah, because we can't actually access node here. Okay, so this is where it gets a little bit difficult. How do we want to do this? Shade the container. We should be able to do inner class exactly as it says. Okay, so the red shows up now. That's what we want. I'm going to close this for a second. Minimize that. It's in the way. It's still, the clicking still isn't worked, and that's what I'm not sure of why that's not working. How can we do this? Let's check if it's working by using another one here. Change background dot color to, let's make it blue. Duration equals 1. And this will let us know if the click is actually registering and it's something else that's broken. Okay, so the click is registering, and it's the set page nav is not working. I'm wondering why that's not the case. Why is the set page nav not working? And page node, why did that not work? Now this is hard to debug from here. Okay, I've never done it quite like in this setup. I usually use a page indicator to do this. In theory, we could also say this. All this page visual and page node are the exact same thing. It was just made more generic to become page visual or a page node at one point, but I guess. Alright, so that works. I'm going to test the crazy thing and see if page visual works. It's not supposed to. It's supposed to be the exact same thing as page node. Yeah, so that didn't work. But I don't know how to redo in this thing. We're going to do this, because this is the container, and now I'm really confused. I'm going to have to put a note to myself here, as I often do. Why didn't page node work? This is a bit weird, because it should have worked. We can get rid of this background now, and I'll figure that one out. But this is another option inside this, because we only ever use page node inside a page indicator. That does the same thing. We did it for navigation, but we've never had a case in the demos yet where the actual pages themselves are responsible for the navigation. It's a little bit different, and I want to get it working though. So we have it. We got rid of the. Let's get rid of the color now too. We know it's working. Get rid of the color. Okay. So now when we click on it, that activates it. Okay, good. So we have the two activations. It goes up and down. The actual animation is still bound to the page control, and there are ways to fix it, but for now, let's focus on this. And this is really annoying that my other mouse doesn't work. Bad Mac, bad Mac, bad Mac. It's on the floor for that. It's on the floor anyways. So we have the basic navigation, but the next thing you notice here is that, other than maybe our zoom factor being a little bit too much, the sign-in should be at the bottom, not the top. And are his pages the same size? His are the same size, and I'm not sure. You have to play with that a lot to see. I can't really tell if they're the same size or not. But in any case, that sign-in thing should be on the bottom, because it's really weird to have it there. Regardless of what this is, that actual option should be on the bottom. And this is where our stock panel here probably shouldn't be a stack panel. We're going to make it a dock panel. And we're going to dock this text. Dock equals top. And the other one's going to be dock equals bottom. And that'll push it off to the bottom. That's just another way of doing a similar layout. Then container in the middle. So we have the items going back and forth. And you'll have to adjust the size so that the stuff only fits in that you want. And since they're all fixed sizes, the up and down, how much is offset, you're going to have to make sure your offset at the top is not too much to hide, to show the controls. And let's see, I want to see again how much it's there. I think it's offset a little bit less. Okay, and there's more of a margin on the top thing here. And I'm not sure how vital that is to his design, but let's put a bit of a more margin there. Had a bit more margin on the top. And it wasn't offset quite as much, more like a 40. Getting these numbers right could take a lot of work, so it's more than 40. Because with you have to consider the zoom factor and everything. How much is his zoom? His isn't zoomed nearly as much, so let's put the scale factor of 9. That might be the issue as well. Okay, so that's 9. And now we have way too much space in the margin underneath there. And because we're not zooming as much, we don't need to offset as much. Now, because this is a non-standard layout, you'll just have to play with the numbers until it does what you want. Just be aware of the fact that users have different screen sizes. And you have weird things like this when they're in landscape mode. This box is going to look really wide. What you can do here is if this box looks really too wide, we can instead do an alignment center. Do width equals 100%, but do a max width of say 200 or 300 instead. And that'll help with the adaptive layout. So in a layout, we'll have this fixed. Doesn't matter how wide it gets, it'll be fixed at that. Now if it gets too small, that's an issue you're going to have to concern yourself for in adaptive layout. That you're just out of luck there. You've made a layout that doesn't work there, but at least we have the basic adaptive one. It doesn't get too wide. But 300 is probably too small. We can probably say 400 safely. And there we go. So if it gets wider, or if you have like a tablet interface, it still looks okay. It just, in the narrow portrait landscape phone, it has a problem. Portrait works fine, and again, I encourage you to make layouts that actually work on landscape mode. Not just landscape, but a narrow landscape. This one does not. I'm not clear on what's the easy way to fix it. And if you really don't have something that can't work in the other mode, if you're really targeting just a phone, for example, then maybe just lock the screen orientation again. It's another option. So we have this basic layout now. And the transitions are a bit different. And it's really hard to see this really fast. You have this little bit there. That's going to be a bit harder to do. The whole thing kind of resizes. It's just a little bit weird. We're going to leave it at the scaling for now, because we've recreated at least the basics of it. And the next thing we can do is, well, at least let's get the transition right, the time right, because... Well, that's why I'm going to work on this exactly now, is that The problem here is when you click on something in a page control, you notice I have not defined the navigation anywhere, and this is where an object, the range, the animation comes from, navigation motion. And we can stick one of these navigation motions on here, is that even though we've turned the interaction to none, there's still a default defined, well, how does it actually transition between actual pages? And I'm still undecided on whether this should actually work this way, or if we turn off everything, it shouldn't do any delay or anything. Like maybe these things here, you could actually fully control it in the deactivating animation instead. Instead of binding it to the control, we could actually say while active and while inactive. So there's a couple options here. So let's check this one first. So navigation motion. And although it's not, you can't realize it, what we're doing right now is a go-to. When you set the active thing, you're doing a go-to. This is opposed to snapping or doing something else. You're doing a go-to, and so we're going to say go-to duration, go-to easing, cubic in out. Try this first. And go-to duration. It's really fast in his transition, and that might make it look a bit better. And I'm not certain. They're just, the snapping here, it doesn't quite have the same feeling. And it's going quite a bit faster, and I'm just trying to think of how... What exactly is that transition? I'm trying to think. Where is that? It's, again, this is why I hate the GIF format. I can't focus on one part. I have to watch this whole thing again and again just to see that little bit. And it's because the contents are resizing as well, it looks like. Or does it come to the front immediately? It looks like it pops to the front immediately. And that we have a weird popping, like our popping happens at the end. I'm trying to think if we should probably, when should the popping actually happen? What you can do is you could take this off here. Yeah, how do we scale this so it does it immediately though? Because you can't have two fighting for it. So this is an inconsistent. What happens is that in his, if it pops immediately, it's not a symmetrical translation. It means the back and forth animation is not the same. So what we're going to do is instead, we're going to do a bring to front. Okay, and so our bring to front, that does the same transition now. So it does the popping. So somehow this feels more satisfying that it pops this way. This is now asymmetrical. That is, it's not really just an animation. We've actually changed the layout. You think it's actually a shadow? No, because it's also... Oh, yeah, it could be. Wow. That's getting to be a little bit difficult. Can we create shadows, like pseudo shadow effects like that? We can. We have a shadow class, and that would actually make more sense. We have a drop shadow, or we just have a shadow. Drop shadow itself is expensive, but we have a normal shadow. Now, how do we get the shadow set up right so it works well? As Reasonably One says, it is a shadow. But they're very particular shadows. It's like a big blur shadow on the whole thing, and we have a shadow class and a drop shadow class. A drop shadow class is probably what it is, but the drop shadow is a fairly expensive thing. So let me just try with a shadow first. Let's take off this color, and let's just stick a shadow on this dock panel. See if that works a bit better. It's a massive shadow on his, which is probably a problem because we don't have that exact same shadow. It's going to go to the left and right as well. And the color, that's hard to say what color that is because it's a shadow. Let's put it like this and see what happens. So it has a shadow now. Maybe is that more satisfying? That actually does seem more satisfying than the gray. We just put a massive shadow on it. We get the same sort of variant then. Yeah, I think you guys are right. I think this looks definitely better than changing the color. And I should have noticed that before. And so this shadow works well enough. This shadow element is effective and efficient. And so getting the actual shadow he has, which is like, you notice it's a rounded shadow, like an actual matching the element. If you absolutely need that, you can use our drop shadow class, but I don't recommend it because drop shadow is an effect which is expensive and doesn't work on native. And because the actual full drop shadow has to do weird things. But this works. And so we're going to go with this. We're going to take away this color. And we're going to take away this red offset because we don't need that. So we're just going to bring it to the front. And that recreates his popping effect better, so it pops and comes in. We don't have the exact same easing or anything on that. What do we have? I can't remember. How does he get that thing? I keep looking. And it's because the text is changing size. There's a weirdness to it. The content's changing size. The other part isn't. And let's go to easings.net and see if we can visually see one that looks more correct for what he's doing. Because it has a quick transition and then slow. And it's only when it's coming to the front, so we have more like a, not cubic, probably like an ease out cubic or something, and that's down here. Just a cubic out might be more appropriate. Yeah, so I'm just guessing a cubic out instead. I don't know if did it really change it. And I think that feels the subtlety here is that, and you probably can't see a lot of the changes in the stream, but I think we have the basic thing here. And so the out easing is probably better here, but again, because we're putting it in motion, it's applying it both directions. There is an even more complicated way to do this, changing the transitions from going to and out. And I'm going to change this transition to 0 first of all. And you see what happens here when I do that. Nothing, because it didn't pick up the transition. It's loading it now. I'm unclear as to why this is still taking so long. Because the go-to duration here should have been really fast, unless 0 is somehow saying use a default. Alright, so I think I have a mistake. I can't figure out if I put 5 seconds. That's really weird. So something's weird with the duration here. This go-to duration is not taking effect here. Go to duration, go to easing, go to distance. Yeah, I don't... Well, I'm going to take the cubic in out, and I'm going to figure out, it's not taking or easing, that might be the other problem. I'll put the note here, to do. Why isn't go to duration working? Because that negates the other effect of having a custom transition. If you need to fine-tune a lot of transitions between pages, PageControl isn't the correct option anyways. PageControl kind of wants to manage the transitions. You could use a Navigator. Navigator has very fine control, but it's a bit hard to set up more pages, so you have to decide what you want the most. But I think we'll stick with this for now, because I think we have the basic effect is recreated, and there is a lot to fine-tune anyways. The one little bit we don't have is we have this sign in here and the create buttons. These buttons shouldn't be there unless they're fully filled in. And I'm trying to think of how we can do that quickly. So let's put a little thing on here that each of these pages, they have this final docking item. They have the dock at the bottom here. And so we're going to dock a panel at the bottom and put the text inside of that. And we're going to say while true, I'm going to give a value, I'm going to say input valid. We're only going to show this if the input's actually valid. And at first it's going to be false, of course. So it's gone, it's not there, the input's not valid. But you don't want to change the size, so we're going to say the fixed height of the bottom is going to be 30. And you can also say or true here, and then just test it. Or maybe not. Try true. And so now it's a fixed size, and that's also okay, because we don't want its size changing with this content going there and back. And we're going to put an input valid now. Now this input valid binds to the state again, and we can put this on the login things here. And we're going to say get input valid. And we'll return this.email does not empty equals string. You'd probably want to put some sort of actual check here, but it doesn't make much of a difference. And this.password does not equal empty string. I wouldn't get too aggressive on these checks, because doing something like an email validator in regex or something is extremely hard, because emails, different email servers allow virtually anything. And the same with passwords. Passwords can be allowed virtually anything. This is something your server should do. And your server is going to tell you if the password's wrong anyways. So I would say as long as the password isn't empty, just kind of accept it. I mean, why not? And you don't want to start checking the length. If you want, you really could, but I'm just going to do that. I just see if it's not empty. And that should work. Why? There we go. And these are two-way bindings, so if I delete the password, it goes away. And the moment I type something, it comes back. And uh-oh, I crashed something. Don't know what I crashed though. Didn't like it. Oh, well, that's no good. Let me go start it up again. We have it set up, and that'll be on both of them. So both of them actually need this. And on the second one, though, we want to have password 2 as well. Open that one up. So we had password 2, and we'll leave this one blank by default, because this is actually a reasonable test to do, is that the passwords actually match. Get input valid. And here you can do the same thing. This.email is not equal. And this.password okay. So on our other side one, now this is really going to be really weird here. Oh, because if this isn't active, and his doesn't account for that, does it? Did he just ignore that case? Check it again. I think he just ignored that case. Yeah. Well, his disappears. You notice the moment he clicks on it, it disappears. So that complicates the design a little bit more, because if this is the active one, we still have to show create new, even if it's not active. And how do we do that as well? We do that as, well, true, inactive. Wow, this is, the two conditions. The active condition is a bit hard to check, though. Now we should have had, I'm trying to wonder why didn't this or true work? The or true should have worked. Okay, the or true did work, so there was something else wrong. And the reason why I want to do this is I'm going to do another variant here. I'm going to put a let inside here. Let bool ux name equals is active. Or actually, I'm going to say force show value equals false. And I'm going to put this ux value equals force show. And then while it's active, we're going to have a while active somewhere. Or actually, since we already have a while inactive, let's change it. Force show, the default is true. And while inactive, we're going to change force show that value equals false. I mean to true. That was correct. No, when it's inactive, we change it to true. And if it's active, it's false. Okay. So now it keeps it, you don't see it on the other side, but you notice when it becomes inactive, it disappears, and then it goes away. The popping is not satisfactory, so you might want to have some sort of animation. And this is, because I have a while true here, I'm trying to think whether you want to do an adding and removing animation, or we just have a, or we just have this always fixed here. I'm trying to think of ux name equals action label. It will change action label dot opacity equals 1, duration equals 0.3, and then we'll start with the opacity as 0. So it fades away then. It may not fade fast enough for you. I don't, what effect did he have? That was scaling as well. Was it just scaling? He's just abruptly disappeared. Wonderful. Let's do a bit of both. Scale factor equals 0.2, duration equals 0.2. It was a bit faster than that. And again, you can play with these options a long time. I just want to show how you combine multiple things together to do such things. And all right, so the scaling is backwards. That's right, because we're doing, again, we're violating my rule. Worry about rest position, and this is while false then. What happens while it's false? While it's false, we want to change the opacity to 0. There we go. And I don't know about the back one, what you should actually do, because his just pops in and out. And here we're going to type a password 123, and if I do 123, it comes out again. And so that becomes our action button. So we've created this basic one here. Now, I didn't want to do, I thought I'd get a bit further than this today, but I can show you how you interpret these things, because I don't want to do the main transition. The main transition is going to be a bit too much now. So the one when you click create, view, and sign in, this is still actually quite a bit of work, so I think I'm going to leave that at today. Let's put some of the details in here. Put a forget password link just to make sure it's actually there. We can do that. This basically means I have a correct forget password. That'll be on sign in. Just add something quickly, but we'll just work on this screen a bit longer and then call it a day for this. And then we're going to put like, yes, the bouncing circle is a loading indicator. and it takes a bit more work to set up than that. Maybe I can do that on Wednesday. Maybe I'll finish this one off on Wednesday. We'll do the loading indicator. So I'll do this screen here a bit longer, and then I'll show you how to patch things here. And then on Wednesday I can finish up the loading indicator and transition to the main screen. So we have a good two-part one. Because that loading indicator, the indicator itself isn't that much work, but the transition to the main screen is a little bit more setup and a little bit more coding. And so I'll do it this way, panel. And so I'll just finish this up, and then we'll have to leave it for today and get a bit more done. But yeah, and then we'll set up the while busy, because I don't want to rush the second part. And I'm going to be rushed if I start doing it, and it starts to get a bit long. Text value equals forgot password. And I never remember that typical link color. What is that link color? I'm never going to be able to click it fast enough. Right, but it's one of these colors. So it looks like one of those. 4DB1 F9. And there's a key here. How do I copy it? Shift something C. Shift something C. I don't know what it is. Did it actually work? It works. I don't know what I copied, but I don't think I copied the right color. That can't possibly be the right color because it's not blue. Alright, so this tool, it is copying a color, but it's not copying the right color. Right, I want this color. Shift C. Is it just not? Maybe I'm not pressing the right color. Well, now it copied. It's a bit weird. Fonts, text, font size equals, I don't know what it is, 18. And here you'd put a clicked handler. I'm just going to do the layouts. That's massive. But here's another indication about mobile and things. These small links, you have to be very careful about this because you need to be big enough for the user to actually click the thing. And that's some of these designs. And so what I've typically been doing is that if you have small text, Apple used to recommend a minimum size of 32 to click on text. And at 14, we're missing like almost 14 points. So if you add a bunch of padding, though, you can actually increase that area. And then you put a clicked handler here, something like this, clicked, forgot password, and you can make it do whatever you want there. And actually, I'm going to stick that in the page because it's going to complain to us. Page, forgot password. We don't know what to do here yet, but we'll just put it in there. Alright, I'm going to reload that then. Something went wrong. Alright, something went wrong. This is distracting the background. Oh, it's the clicked bits. I screwed up the clicked bits. Yeah, alright, Auction Deprived found it faster than I did. There we go. And, okay, we can change the padding. So this gives us enough space to click it, but the padding is we don't want it left and right. We just want it top and bottom. And the important thing is then you can make the text really small. So if you're designing this and you want to say, look, this should be small text here, but we still need space for the user to click it. So if I momentarily give this a color, you'll see how much space the user has to click. The user still has a big space to click on it, so if they're attempting to press the forgot password, they're not likely to hit the text. They have a 1 in 3 chance, but they can hit that whole box, and that's just fine. But what we have to do here again is then you want to say hit test mode equals local bounds. And this ensures you can click somewhere beside the text and still activate the local bounds. And the same with the client. And these sign-ins, these things, like the text here is big enough that you probably don't have to actually do it. Those will be clickable as is, although you should actually follow guides. Make sure it's 32 in size. I'm just saying 32 because Apple put that in their guidelines once. And it seems like a reasonable size. Things less than that are hard to click. Now, what else can we do? We have this text here, and I said, if these fields are all like duplicated here, you might want to reuse the design because you have a form label. The form label is copied, but it is a, you want to modify, you want to have a class that says this is supposed to be, this is also supposed to be to upper. It's supposed to be small caps, which we do with to upper. They're not really small caps. You see there's small caps here, and they're a lot smaller than that. So we're going to change the size of that text control form label. It's a lot smaller, but also they have to go uppercase. But say we don't want to change this here, because the decision to make it uppercase is not something that should make it to the translation people. So if you're doing multiple languages, you don't want to say email all uppercase. You want this to be a visual transition. So in the form label, we're going to say form label text, and we're going to change this a different way. Or actually, we can leave it form label, say value. But this form label now, we're going to change to an, let's change this to an item group. And this is where things get a bit weird. Item group, what is an item group? Well, it's nothing. Item group and instance are things there to create little groupings of classes that actually don't have groups. You don't want to create an item group here. You actually want to create a text, but you need some way to group these things together. And I've never actually done this way before, but this is why it was created, so I'm hoping it works. Value, and it has a value, and we'll map the text value to this value then. Okay, and I got errors. Oh, not item group, node group. Sorry. I don't know why I said item. I say item too often. Node group exists. Uh-oh. We may have hit a limitation of the preview then. Well, it didn't like that at all. No, okay, sorry about that. You won't actually be able to use the node group here. We actually have a defect to do. Node group doesn't work. And I think it has to do with the property, because there's nowhere to bind the property. No fear, there's always options. You can still make a panel. The reason you can still make a panel is because panels tend to collapse to the items inside of them. If the panel itself has no sizing, it's just going to collapse to what's inside of it. And you get that. But the reason, the purpose for this was that now we have the opportunity to say to upper on whatever value we give it. And there we go. So now we get the to upper bit of it. And he has a bit more spacing in there. So maybe our stack panel should have at least a bit of spacing. Item spacing. And it's not very much in his display. Let's just say 3. Okay, now we have that. And again, I don't have the font size and perfect everything. It's also because of it's the gift. I can't freeze in that screen. But we have the basic layout here. And you want to change it. We don't have the show password bit. We could actually add that as well. But I think we'll leave this one for now. We have that basic screen. And the way we've done this is we're using a page control. To recap, we're using a page control. So this is actually a proper navigation item. And these are bound to model objects in the back end. Each one's a page. And what's good about this approach is in the back end, in the main state, these objects, the business state here, has no idea it's being presented in this overlapping fashion. It has no idea that you laid it out this way. They're just general pages. It says, look, I have these 2 pages. Show them however you want. And the UX has completely decided how it displays it. And we've used a page control, and it's a very non-typical page control. We've turned off the inactive state default, we've turned off the clip to bounds, we've turned off the transition, we've turned off the interaction. We basically turned off everything and said, look, I'm going to control this. And I think we may have actually created a convenience class which does something like this before, but it's kind of hard because it's not used very much. It's easier to turn everything off. There are other ways to do this. If you're going to completely avoid what a page control does, there are other ways, but this is simple because this provides the binding to the pages. If you need even finer detail, you can use a navigator, but the issue with navigator is it doesn't have a fixed set of pages open. It can though. It definitely can, but page control does that better. And we've created the two basic forms, the labels. We copied a bit here, but it's just because we said, look, the fact they use the same values is just kind of incidental. It's not true redundancy. You may have a Facebook login or other login. You may have a finger pad scanner or something like that. And then we just use the dock panel. We use this container to contain the middle bit inside, so the outer layer has the same thing. And we use the control. We've used various options for clicking to bring it to the front. So when it's inactive, when you click on it, that brings it to the front. And otherwise, it should be in the front by default, and just various little animations. So on Wednesday, what we'll do is we have this basic one. So again, this comes back when you have the correct password. We also did that. You have to have a valid password for it to work, and it comes back. Same with sign in. If you're missing a password, the sign in option actually goes away. It's not clickable. We'll finish this on Wednesday, the navigation to the main screen. When you click this, we did this first bit. Now when you click sign in, it's going to do this loading, and then it's going to go to the main screen. That should be about an equally length show. A bit too long to do now, but we'll leave this. I'll publish this code as is in this typical place. I'll put it in the comments of the show. This is working on the release view right now, and I'll go add issues for all the things we found. I think they're minor ones. We have workarounds for all of them, and it should work. But I think this turned out okay. I'm happy enough with the results. And I'm happy that you guys joined into watching. Again, if you have questions for this after I publish it, don't hesitate to watch the next show, or just come over to the forums and post a question about it, and we'll try to answer the question. And don't forget to subscribe or follow, retweet, everything. It all helps. Thank you very much, and we'll catch you again on Wednesday.